Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, and this is Not Just Cute, the podcast, where we discuss all kinds of topics to help bridge the gap that exists between what we know and what we do in early childhood education. We're starting conversations with academics, authors, decision makers, educators, and parents so that together we can improve the quality of early childhood education, while at the same time protecting and respecting the childhood experience. Dr. Michele Borba has been a teacher, an educational consultant, and a parent for 40 years. And she's never been more worried than she is about this current generation of kids. But it may not be for the reasons that you would think. She says that the high-achieving students she talks with every day are actually more accomplished, better educated, and more privileged than ever before. But they're also more stressed, unhappier, and struggling with anxiety, depression, and burnout at younger and younger ages. Her newest book, Thrivers: The Surprising Reason Why Some Kids Struggle While Others Shine, combines scientific studies, input from dozens of researchers and experts focusing on resilience, and interviews with more than 100 young people from all walks of life. Through all of that research, Dr. Borba found something surprising. The difference between those who struggle and those who succeed comes down not to grades or test scores, but to 7 character traits that set thrivers apart and set them up for happiness and greater accomplishments later in life. Before we begin, I want to let you know that I recently released a free mini course covering 5 keys to intentional whole child development. If you'd like to learn more about how to implement and advocate for developmentally appropriate, responsive early education, sign up for this free course in today's show notes. You can find those show notes for this episode at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 42. Dr. Borba is an internationally renowned educational psychologist and an expert on parenting and character development. She's a regular contributor on NBC's Today Show and has been featured as an expert on shows like Dateline, The View, Dr. Phil, NBC Nightly News, Fox and Friends, Dr. Oz, and The Early Show, as well as many others. I was thrilled to have a chance to sit down with her as well, so I'm excited for you to hear what she has to say. If you're wondering what we need to focus on most to support real resiliency, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Dr. Michele Borba, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
I can't wait to talk to you about this.
I'm really excited. Before we jump in to your most recent project, could you tell us a little bit about your professional journey and the type of work that you do and the path that brought you there?
Oh, well, I started way back when with the best classes ever with early childhood education. I was dealing with very young kids. Piaget was my model. And along the way, what I discovered is that they kept making me go to teach older and older and older kids, but my heart was always with younger and younger and younger children. And then along the way, I started writing books, parenting guides, parenting books. But the most fun thing in the whole wide world is I also got to teach all over the world. So what I found is that I don't care what country I'm in. Last year, I was working in Beirut.
Oh, wow.
And then from Beirut to Turkey to Canada to, Los Angeles, everybody has the same concerns. How do we help our kids be the best they can be?
So wonderful. And those same principles become universal, right?
Absolutely.
We have those unique applications, but it comes down to those core principles. Well, you've written a remarkable number of books. Have you kept track?
No, after a while, I decided not to, but thank you. And by the way, the reason I wrote all of those books, The Power of a Teacher, Mrs. Nunley in 8th grade said, Michele, when you grow up, you should be a writer.
Oh, I love it. The influence of teachers.
Amazing. Yeah. Bless teachers.
Yeah. Well, the majority of those books I noticed focus on soft skills and those pro-social skills like empathy and self-control. How do you think our perception as a society of those soft skills has changed over the decades?
Well, I think up until the pandemic, we were still seeing soft skills as soft and fluffy and not essential. I think that was the bottom line. Schools were buying into it because they saw that kids really had the need for it. So we saw that SEL or social emotional learning going into our schools. Then came the pandemic. And all of a sudden, maybe there's a reset on our parenting that our kids need something more. that unless we help them learn to handle the stress, or because they've been social distanced and they haven't been able to connect and exercise their little play muscles and child development, that it's been harder and harder. Our kids became more worrisome, a little more fearful. We're starting to realize it's not just soft and fluffy, but essential.
Yeah, that the pandemic has really brought a lot of things into focus for people.
Yeah.
So your most recent book is called Thrivers, The Surprising Reasons Why Some Kids Struggle and Others Shine, which I think is a really fascinating topic to explore. So what prompted you to take on that big topic?
Unfortunately, right before the pandemic, we were seeing an upsurge in stress amongst our kids. And these were like the most prestigious organizations across the world and across our country said 1 in 5 American children will suffer from some kind of a mental health disorder. 1 in 5. Stress was at the top of the levels and was impacting our children's well-being. And then what happened was I started interviewing teens. If you really want to get a pulse and an urgency of writing a book, they were wonderful, but they were right on the mark saying, somebody has got to help us learn how to handle the stress because we are so stressed out. We are the most stressed out generation on record, they said, you know that, but we feel like we're being raised. One kid told me as more like products, and we need to know how to help our human sides. How do we help us cope? And then came the pandemic. And a crisis only amplifies pre-existing problems. So it was whoa, this is the need. For Thrivers was all about how to help our kids become resilient, how to keep the mental health down, but also the same traits that raise resilient, happier kids are the same traits that also raise peak performers. So it's not either or. You don't have to just teach SEL skills. If you do the right skill set, you're going to help your kids really be more successful in school as well as life.
Isn't that fascinating? We do get into this tug of war of the either or, like you said, when really they work together so well. We need both. We need both.
Yes, we do. There. Our kids do, particularly in an uncertain world like this. If not a pandemic, what else is coming down the pike?
Right. And like you mentioned, right now in particular, the concepts of thriving and resilience, they were always important, but the pandemic really brought that into front and center, that we need to talk about how do we help our children to be resilient, particularly given the stress that so many children and families have been under over the past year and the disruptions to their educational and social lives for children in particular. So there are a lot of discussions about how we should help children to recover as we hopefully move into this upside. So where do you think we should be focusing our attention as we work to support children and really help them to thrive as we're coming on this upswing that we hope we're seeing?
I think there's a couple of footnotes before we even begin. And the first thing is we've got to have a strong why. Anytime we as a group of parents decide we're going to make a change, we need to really know why the heck should we? And is it really science-backed? I think one reason we've been having dismal results is that we've been fed parenting books that sometimes, or advice, or being told by somebody next door, here's what you should do. And it's not based on science. So the first thing in Thrivers is I wanted nothing but the best of the best based on what evidence of longitudinal studies say work. And the second thing is know something about kids who thrive. First, thrivers are made, not born. That means we got a lot of power. But the second thing is when we look at longitudinal studies, and that's what I was phenomenally fascinated with. There's studies that have been studying the same kids for 40 and 50 years who have suffered enormous adversity, but despite it, I mean, extreme poverty, schizophrenic parents, homelessness and wars, and still made it. Why? They found two things. Number one is they had protective factors, buffers. They learned some little skills that are all through Thrivers. Don't teach them all or your kid will never let you read another book, but find the ones that work for your family. But the second thing is they had a calm parent or a champion in their life, maybe Great Aunt Sally or Mrs. Numley, my teacher, who refused to give up on the child. So maybe we start with ourselves. We realize we need to be calm because our stress levels are spilling over to our kids. Our kids are picking up, particularly our younger ones. Our younger ones see it, and we are very powerful. I swear they come with little video cam recorders. They play us back at the most inopportune moments, usually when the mother-in-law arrives.
Right.
To see ourselves. So first, there we go. We're going to be calm ourselves. We're going to have a strong why. Then we're going to delve in. We're going to look at anything in Thrivers, and we're going to just choose one thing. one thing. This book is not reading from start to finish in one night. It's a use it for from sandbox to prom, and keep looking at skills that your children need. And then maybe a minute a day for an entire month, keep practicing as a family till your child learns it and can do it without you. Then you can go, did it, parenting moment 101. Now you add the next and the next and the next.
I love that. And I love that you focus on, as you said, focus on one thing at a time. Don't get overwhelmed, because we as parents and teachers will get overwhelmed. Yeah. And inevitably the children are going to be overwhelmed as well. So it just makes sense. So you say pick one, but you do share 7 character traits in your book. You share self-confidence, empathy, self-control, integrity, curiosity, perseverance, and optimism. These are 7 of my favorite things to talk about with young children. So this might be a little bit of an unfair question, kind of like asking a parent to pick their favorite child, but is there one of those traits that really stands out for you, or one where you found something really interesting to you as you were doing your research?
Well, the fascinating thing is, yes to that question. Let's get to it. The fascinating thing is, first, for any parent, you don't have to have all 7 of them. So breathe. Your kid does not have to be gifted in all of them. But there's your long range plan. We know, I got 3 kids. They're different as night and day. Some kids are going to be some and strong in one area, some in the other. So first, breathe. The second of the 7, I think confidence is the base of all 7, because confidence to me is self-understanding. It's knowing who I am. And for a young child, it's knowing who your child is. So the best thing to do is look at, there's a core asset survey that every parent says is the best thing in the book. And it's because it takes a moment to stop doing everything and evaluate your child, not based on their GPA, but based on what do they love to do? Who are they? What are their learning styles? What are their hobbies? What are their interests? What do they get excited about? If you've got more than one kid, then use a different color pen for each child. And what you'll discover is that becomes your framework for the rest of your parenting life of, okay, now I'm going to help my child become the best he can be based on who he is, not what I want him to become. That's the bottom line. In fact, I just did a segment with Dr. Phil where they actually had a mother and daughter do it together. And he put the results up on the board. He said, this is phenomenal, because they had so many like interests. And then it's, where are they mismatched? Mother didn't realize how the daughter didn't think that her own self-control, now these are teens, didn't think her own self-control was as strong as the mother thought. So when you're dealing with a little one, they're not going to be able to tell you, Mom, I get really stressed easily. You have to watch.
Right.
But there's where you go. That'll help you. And the most wonderful thing about it is that I interviewed a lot of parents, and one dad of a middle school kid told me, you know what? I discovered the most amazing thing is, once I knew I was supposed to figuring out who my kid was, I listened in. I didn't know how excited my kid was about wolves. Wolves, for Pete's sakes. I wanted to be a lawyer. So I decided to take him to Yellowstone for my son trip. And I arranged to have him meet with the park ranger. And while he was meeting with the park ranger, I sat with their mouth open going, my God, my kid knows more about wolves than the park ranger. Right. That was my moment that said, he is passionate about this. He's probably going to grow up to be a biologist. I need to let him in that path, because that's what's going to help him shine. And
I love that emphasis that you have on focusing on who children are rather than what we want them to be. And I think it's a huge shift in our perception when we're focused on who they are. That's really looking at the child. It's child-centered. And when we're focused on what we want them to be, that's almost commodifying the child, right?
It's great term. I love that term. Yes, because the other thing that we do about this is, the research said, sadly, that we spend more time on our kids' weaknesses and trying to fix them than on their strengths. So what happens is their confidence tanks. I'm not saying stop helping your child be good in math if he's struggling, but I am saying put equal, if not more, time on what he's good at, because University of Chicago says your child is more likely to shine if you focus on that. They create this sense of glow. In fact, the easy thing is just take an index card this week and walk around the house without your kid knowing you're watching, and figure out what they really seem to enjoy more, what their tone in their voices has more energy, or they spend a little more time on that. Mom, I can't come to dessert because I got to finish this. Boy, there's your moment that goes, he likes this.
Right.
And then you can carve in a little more time for that, because we have discovered that thrivers, this is a hint for the rest of your life, have hobbies. They use the hobbies to decompress. And maybe it's knitting or woodwork or reading or, painting or clay. That's what they love to do. And that's going to help keep their stress down.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So what do you think are some of the things that we have that are getting in the way of these things that help children to thrive?
Schedules. And kids said, when I asked them, what are your hobbies? They looked at me like, hobbies? Who the hell has time for a hobby? So maybe once the school doors open, you can take a moment, because we start scheduling our kids even at age 3. Are you carving in time that's things that they love and they enjoy doing to help that kid be the best they can be? That's step number 1. Step 2 is putting so much on the GPA at age 3 that we're not helping the kids see the whole child, the other side of the picture. Maybe it's putting all our time and energy into the worksheets and the flashcards and not spending time to, hey, it's just like 5:00. Let's everybody just, love this. Put a sheet over the top of our dining room table, put pillows and flashlights, and let's just go read together as a family. Bring the dog, bring the cat, just read. Because now you have family memories that are wonderful, but reading is a glorious time for just decompressing as well. And guess what? It's also highly correlated to academic achievement. So it's not either or. Mm-hmm. A lot of these things you can do both. And that's what Thrivers is trying to do, is give you a hodgepodge of lots of things that you can do. They're all age related. So you can figure out what to do for a 5-year-old, or if you have a 10-year-old, here's what to do with a 10-year-old. But then do it not once, but keep repeatedly do it until it kicks in as the habit.
Oh, perfect. So you said earlier, and you've said it a few times, and I love it, that thrivers are made, not born. So I have 2 questions about that. What are some things that we can do as parents and educators to help them become thrivers? And second, is it ever too late to help a child become a thriver?
Let's go to number 2 and then work our way back.
Okay.
You just asked the 2 questions every parent has, particularly, I got a teen, is it too late? No, it's not too late for us as adults. So the entire counseling industry would go out of business.
Right?
It's never too late. We just need to be intentional. And there's the first step to raising a thriver. We just need to be a little more intentional. Don't overwhelm yourself by trying to do too much, parent. It's going to backfire on you, but instead just weave it in. The second thing is, maybe we look at the skills that we know during a pandemic our children need most. So we know there's 7 strengths, and each strength, like confidence, optimism, self-control, is made up of 3 skills. And each one of those skills is made up of multiple ideas. So if we let's just look at that, and there's our bird's eye view from life. If we look at those strengths and we say, which one do our kids need? I'd say right now, self-control and optimism. Don't we all? And we don't look at them as linear. My gosh, that's number 7. We just jump to 7 and say, what are we going to do now? Let's start with self-control, because it's not too late. We can do little things for 3-year-olds. The best one I saw was in a classroom for kindergarten kids. And this Jennifer Bell was the teacher. She was amazingly wonderful. And the first thing is, imagine 3 and 4-year-olds. She'd say, now, what happens when you get stressed? And these little 4-year-olds go, I can't think. My head starts going like this. And one kid goes, I always get time out. Another kid goes, so it's like, I start to grind my teeth and I get really upset. So Jennifer Bell says to the kids, so what do? And all these precious kids yell, you just breathe, Miss Bell. You just breathe. Okay, show Dr. Borba you just breathe. All these little guys lie on the floor. They grab bean bags. Now they grab bean bags that are turtles and froggies. They put them on their tummy. They're flat on the floor. And what she's taught them is the fastest way to relax is a slow, deep breath. But you don't, with a 3 and 4-year-old, teach it one day. You work on it every single day until they finally get it. But it's slow breathing. So what she says is put Froggy on your tummy. Now close your eyes, breathe slowly up. Now what's happening is Froggy's taking a slow ride up. And then what she says is, now Froggy goes slow down, not too fast. It scares Froggy. Slow. Why? Is because if you really want to get the fastest way to relax, it's a slow, deep breath from your tummy, like you're riding up an escalator. You hold it, and then you slowly let it out. So your exhale is twice as long as your inhale. If you do that, slow, deep, up and down, up and down, up and down. Navy SEALs taught me that. They said that's what we do before we go into battle. It takes you get more control. You can relax. You can think better. So maybe that's the way. Slow, deep, not once, but every single day at the same time, or 3 times a day, depending on the kids. Some kids are going to need that a lot more than others.
Yeah, and such a playful integration that makes it just easy for our youngest, our little ones. Well, again, the book is Thrivers, The Surprising Reasons Why Some Kids Struggle and Others Shine. It released just a few days ago. So everybody can find that at their favorite bookseller, and you'll also find a link to it as well as other resources, including an amazing book study guide. Those will all be in the episode's show notes. So Dr. Michele Borba, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you this morning. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and for everything that you do for children and families.
Oh, thank you. It's been a joy. Best to you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to Not Just Cute, the podcast. You can find show notes at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 42. There you'll find links to Dr. Borba's book, as well as the free discussion guide to accompany it, along with other interesting tidbits addressed in this episode. Show notes will also share a link to the free mini course covering the 5 keys to intentional whole child development. Head to notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 42 to get signed up and receive key resources to help you implement and advocate for developmentally appropriate, responsive early education. I'm Amanda Morgan. You can read more on my blog and sign up for the Not Just Cute newsletter at notjustcute.com. And follow me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/notjustcute. I'm also sharing some new things on Instagram, so follow me there at Amanda_notjustcute. Thanks for listening today, and as always, thank you for standing up for children and for childhood.